Hey, just want to take a moment to remember victims of 9/11. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families. Had a lot more people die, the first responders and the people that ended up cleaning up all of that, and some diseases related to all of that. Just really, really sad. So they're on our hearts, and thoughts and prayers to the families that have lost loved ones on 9/11. What an absolutely crazy day. Completely bananas. Wild swings. NASDAQ had an over 700-point swing up and down. Looking for a bottom this week. Talk more about that. Talk briefly about the inflation data. Now we got the CPI data, which is the Consumer Price Index. Was supposed to come in at 0.2%. Came in right in line with expectations. The month-over-month number. The core month-over-month was just slightly higher at 0.3%. It was supposed to come in at 0.2%. And then we have the year-over-year number. The core year-over-year number was expected to come in at 2.6, came in at 2.5, still lower than the previous reading at 2.9. So we beat on the estimate, and we're lower than the 2.9 at 2.5 with the headline number. The core came in line with the expectations, 3.2, and that was the previous reading. Now, initially we saw a big sell-off, and the market is anticipating, has this unrealistic expectation, we're going to get this 50 basis point cut out of the Fed. At the beginning of the year, they were getting 7 cuts this year, and they're expecting to begin at the beginning of the year. Again, totally unrealistic expectations. But the Fed fund futures, the betting markets have been hovering between a quarter point or half a point cut of the Fed. Now that's taken off the table. They were hoping this would come in really, really low. They would get this, the Fed kicking it off with 0.5% cut. And I told you again, the Fed's going to start cutting. The anticipation is, they're going to cut in the markets. We're going to have 2020 and 2021 all over again. Can't do that. They can't cut down rates down and drop them down to nothing right now. If they do, inflation will come roaring back. It's the risk. People aren't realistic expectations because, again, the Fed could start lowering rates. They're going to start doing a rate cutting campaign because recession is coming. Recession will help deal with the inflation problem. So, again, eventually, when the recession shows up, start seeing get tank and the topping process complete and all the rest of it. Fed might get more aggressive with cuts and, again, may even bring back QE later, but they can't do it right now. I have a recession that's going to deal with the inflation problem. That's what the Fed needs, recession, to resolve that issue. Again, the markets continue to have unrealistic expectations. Going to get 7 cuts this year, seven quarter point cuts. Going to get 50 basis point cuts. Just stuff that's just out of touch with reality. We're going to get the cut out of the Fed. It's going to be a quarter point. Markets will rally for a few weeks, top out, and then likely see major reversal going into the election. Again, there tends to be uncertainty around the election cycle. Have the month of October. I think September can have volatility to it, but I think we're going to get the September like what we had in 2007, where you had a rally into early October, and then you got the sell-off. You're watching, but we did get the CPI pretty much in line, except for 0.1% higher there with the month-over-month with the core. Expectations on the year-over-year headline number for CPI. We saw the drop and then a massive pop back up. Absolutely amazing move on the NASDAQ. NVIDIA leading the charge. Tomorrow we're going to get the producer price index. The market doesn't not to put as much weight in the PPI. But I do want to tell you this. We had an up day, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, just something to be aware of. Oftentimes, you'll go up with one and down with the other. At a CPI rally, we could have a sell-off with the PPI. No requirement, it plays out that way, but again, just oftentimes one will give you an up day and the other will give you a down day. We'll see what happens. We're starting to turn back to bullish now. We have potentially that bullish inside day now playing out. It did get confirmed today on those daily charts. I've been talking about 2 bottoming process processes. One, the inside day, Friday's low holding. The other is that we get another push down. I told you it could play out either way. Now, the inside day scenario is winning. I told you I was looking for a bottom this week. I'm looking historically, you get a rally for multiple weeks when you get the Fed pivot. So we got the Fed pivot 1 week from 1 week from now. And again, I'm looking for a bottom, as I've said, and we may have now confirmed that with today's rally. I'll show you the charts. We'll get the producer price index before the market opens. Markets have now become very, very overbought with the S&P, especially the NASDAQ, so we'll see if we get a pullback or not. But we will get the producer price index, and also before the market opens, the initial jobless claims. And again, I'm sure it's on your radar, but reminder, Wednesday the 18th, next week, we will be getting a decision. The Fed is likely going to cut. We'll get the press conference, and again, into that, I told you we would likely see a bottom carve out. Looks like Al may have it with the confirmation today of the bullish inside days from Monday. Show you the signals in the daily time frame and intraday, the 4-hour charts, the 60-minute. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. If you take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. I thank you for your consideration for that. We have the VIX. The VIX last Friday predicted an up day, a bounce or bottom for the S&P 500. We got that bullish inside day. It was correct. The following day, it predicted a down day, 85% chance in the next two sessions. We did not get that. VIX now dropping back below the 10, coming back to the 20. The S&P rallied to the 20, and the 50 VIX here at the 50 and the 20. So again, VIX holds above the 50. Bad stuff will continue to happen on the S&P 500. When the VIX is above the 50, the green line, things happen on the S&P 500. We have it get back above the 50 here, and we have this sell-off. VIX drops below the 50 period moving average. S&P could eventually get a bigger rally. Keeping in mind, though, that the 50 is still above the 200, and that's likely going to remain that way in all likelihood throughout the topping process and eventually market. It might be that they turn back to a bearish and then quickly go back to bullish. But again, if we're going to have a bear market, the 50 is eventually going to get above the 200 and stay there, and maybe that's the case right now. And I continue to tell you that, again, I'm looking for a bottom. Maybe we now have that with the confirmation. Bullish inside day that we got on Monday. We'll need a follow through later in the week if that's going to be the case. Early next week. I told you eventually I'm looking for a Fed pivot rally. Historically, that is what has happened. Rounding the Fed pivot. I told you we've been selling off. I was looking for a bottom and a reversal, and maybe we now have that with the confirmation of the bullish inside day from Monday's inside day bar. Talking about that and needs to happen to validate that. We got to see the momentum signals turn back to bullish. They're not there yet in the daily time frame. They are intraday, but not yet in the daily time frame. Talking about all of that in this video. Watch this video all the way through. Tomorrow we'll get the PPI wholesale inflation data. Next week, the Fed pivot. Watching the market's reaction to the PPI inflation data. We had a big rally with the CPI data. Again, sometimes you're up on one day and down on the other. Not always, but often that is the case. We'll be watching to see if that's what happens this time. Markets have now become overbought. It rose by 8% today. It went down. It gapped higher. It went back and filled the gap. It didn't go negative for a brief moment. Turned right back to positive. Ended up 8% higher. That helped the NASDAQ. We still have the MACD bearish in negative territory. So again, we could still see a pullback. I am looking for a bottom. And again, we got that bullish inside day on Monday. That's now been confirmed along with the NASDAQ and S&P 500. Strong day up above the 10-period moving averages. But again, NVIDIA helping out and the semiconductors helping out NASDAQ. I was looking for a bottom this week ahead of the Fed pivot. We get a multiple week Fed pivot rally that will end up taking NASDAQ back up to 2,000 or 20,400 and S&P to new highs. I think we'll see a topping process complete. So here we are, NVIDIA rallying back up towards the 50. We're below the 50. The 10 and 20 are below the 50. But we've rallied back up to just under the 50-period moving average after a pretty good sell-off after filling the gap at 126. So watching what happens with the PPI data. And again, do we see more volatility to carve out a bottom? I do believe a bottom is forming, may now be confirmed on NASDAQ. So just wanted to touch bases. NVIDIA up 8%, getting back above the 100-period moving average, a pink line right there, up to the 50, helping out NASDAQ. It was an absolute crazy day. I mean, completely bananas. This was absolutely incredible. NASDAQ ended up 408 points higher, up 2.1%. It was down over 300 points at the low. We got the CPI data, and we just, this is the 5-minute chart so you can see what happened. We gapped higher a little bit here, and then it was just nothing but selling for the first hour and a half or so. We found a bottom, but NASDAQ sold off. NASDAQ sold off 300 points, and then the bulls came in. And look at this. We had this flag pattern. We had this bear flag pattern, and we came up, reached the peak of it just ever so slightly again, just like we did over here. So I drew another trend line there, and we came back down and we breached the lower end, went back up, got back above it, got back above the 200 here on the 5-minute chart, and boom! Again, the bulls came in, and we just rallied. Rest of the session, no pullbacks whatsoever, no meaningful ones anyways. Just tiny little minute bars, and then we just keep going. We took out this trend line. Actually, initially took this one out, and then we came back and we pushed above this one and just plowed right on through that. And I told you I was looking for a bottom to validate Friday's low as a bottom with the bullish inside days that we got on Monday, which have now been confirmed. For a divergence to set up with the bear flags that we go back down, get one more push. Regardless, I told you whichever way it plays out, I'm looking for a bottom because I think we're going to get a multiple week rally surrounding the Fed pivot that will likely take us into early October, mid-October. I think we're going to get new highs on the S&P and a bigger move on NASDAQ. Now, again, we've had this update now with the CPI. We'll be watching to see if we get a pullback, down day with the PPI. Sometimes it works out that way. We'll see what happens. Regardless, we were looking for a bottom, and again, we now have confirmation of that. Now you need a follow-through move. But absolutely amazing move here on the NASDAQ. We're up 400 points. We were down 300. A 700-point swing up and down on the NASDAQ. Absolutely incredible. We become overbought in the 5-minute time frame, and we're getting some negative divergences. So we'll see if we sell off again. Sometimes you rally with the CPI and sell off with the PPI, or vice versa. Sometimes it doesn't always play out that way, but many times it does. Watching to see what becomes of the divergences now, and with this big rally we've had on NASDAQ. NASDAQ up 2.17%, being helped by NVIDIA and the semiconductors. Same thing, I talked about these possible bear flag patterns. We saw the S&P, we saw it break down before NASDAQ, but then again, sold off. Hour and a half of trading, had a very sharp decline, followed by a vertical move. I mean, absolutely incredible. We've become very overbought now. So again, we'll be watching confirmation of our inside days. We went back and we've actually filled the gap here on the NASDAQ, on the S&P 500, and rebounded. So I told you I'd be watching to see, does Friday's low hold? And we got that bullish inside day on Monday on those daily charts, which I'll show you in just a second. Those candlesticks are now being confirmed. Need a follow through if that's going to be the case. Absolutely an incredible day, a free fall followed by a parabolic rise, forming a V pattern. Absolutely incredible. Now, this is the S&P daily chart. The wild swing did give us a bottoming tail, and then again, we closed strong above our 10 period, right up into the 20 period moving average. They did get a bearish cross, but a really powerful rally back up. Again, testing this low to fill the gap. Talking about two scenarios. I've been talking about the bullish inside day on the daily charts we had on Monday. Needed to be confirmed. Follow through. Confirmation today. Talking about flags that we're forming on the intraday charts. Does that give us a divergence on the 60-minute chart? We get one more push down, regardless of which way it plays out, whether we go a little bit lower than this low to the 100 period and bottom out, or whether we have Friday's lows hold with our bullish inside days. I'm looking for a bottom ahead of the Fed pivot. Again, it looks like now the bullish inside day scenario is winning and playing out. It's being confirmed anyways with our confirmation above the candlestick from Friday with that sell-off with the jobs report. I was looking for a bottom, looking at both of these scenarios, the bullish inside day or the 60-minute charts, bear flags. Started to see the bear flags play out with the breakdown of the flag patterns, and then boom, came back in and we went vertical. We had a bullish rise back up. Absolutely incredible day today. Violent move down, a violent move back up as the bulls and bears fight it out. So again, signals now starting to turn back to bullish. I'll show you those signals. Not all of them, but starting to see some signals starting to now turn back to bullish. We still have the 10 and 20 above the 50-period moving average, and our 100-period moving average is holding as support. We had the Dow up 125 points, up 0.3%. S&P was up over 1%, up 58.5 points. NASDAQ was up over 2%. We saw NASDAQ 100 rise by over 400 points. Russell was up 0.3%, and the VIX was down 7.29%, so 1769. And we had those 9 counts to the downside. Those counts, we closed above the bar from 4 bars ago, so those counts have been wiped out. We were up to bar 6 on NASDAQ and S&P. That canceled them out. I talked about that. If we continued to sell off divergences on the 60-minute charts, you might get 9 counts. Counts were canceled out. Again, we had an inside day there on Monday. I talked about, again, the 2 scenarios, either confirming the bullish inside day, which we've now done today, big rally up, or one more push down towards our 200-period moving average and forming a divergence on the RSI. Told you it could play out either way. Talking about both of these scenarios since Monday at that bullish inside day. After Friday's big drop with the jobs report. The bullish inside day now confirmed. We've had 3 days up. We'll probably see some type of pullback. Maybe that comes with the PPI data tomorrow. As I said, sometimes one of the reports is up and the other one is down. We'll see how it unfolds. Again, CPI giving us a rally. Over here, CPI gave us a big drop, 500-point drop. Here, CPI gave us this gap higher. So again, strong down for the CPI report. Again, I've made it very, very clear what I think is going on, and this is the blueprint. I think we have an ABC move here, and again, if Friday's low can hold right here on NASDAQ, then maybe that's done and we're into C already. But I do think, again, let me be clear, I do think that we're going to get a Fed pivot rally that's going to go for several weeks and end up taking us back up into here, probably into maybe late September, but more likely into early or mid-October. And then I think you're going to get a double top. I've talked about this at great length and detail. Short-term price fluctuations down and up, and again, the churning back and forth. Again, I think we'll end up forming this double top. And again, it moves up and down along the way. This is what I think is happening. If we get here, I think you'll likely see a lower high. I think S&P will be at a new high at that point, and I think you're going to complete a topping process. In all likelihood, recession is coming. We've had the uninversion of the yield curve. I talked about that earlier in the week. Warning recession is probably 3 to 6 months away. It will begin to price that in. The Fed will begin to lower rates to try to ease the pain of a recession, and it will probably be coupled with another driven issue, another financial crisis, probably be the commercial real estate crisis spilling over into the banks where they have huge exposure, even more exposure than what they had to subprime loans. And all of this is going to come down the pike. Lose sight of the big picture here. Rally today, we'll see if it continues or if we pull back. We're still below our 20 period here. The 10 has crossed below the 20, still below our 50 period moving average. So there's more work to be done to get us back up here. But we'll see if we carve out a bottom. And again, good shot if we get a follow through to this, and maybe pull back and then get a follow through back above our 50 period moving average. We'll confirm last Friday's low as a bottom. Still keep this here in case we end up coming back towards the 200, but again, a confirmation and a follow through. We got the confirmation with the bullish inside day. Now we need to get a follow through. We'll see if we get a pullback first off of our 20-period moving average, as some negative divergences are now forming on the intraday charts. NASDAQ daily chart here. Confirmation to the inside days on both NASDAQ and S&P 500 in the daily time frame. Inside day scenario, the inside day bottoming scenario so far is playing out. I talked about these bear flag patterns as we moving towards the 50 period. We hit the 50 period initially, had a big sell-off of 300 points on NASDAQ, and then went back up and cleared the 50, cleared the 200, cleared the support and resistance line, and even cleared the trending cloud. Look at that. I mean, amazing. I talked about the inside day playing out, that scenario, or if we bottomed sooner, that again, if we bottomed later, that we would form a possible divergence right here. Either one of those scenarios was possible. I was watching to see which one played out. Well, guess what? Bullish inside day scenario playing out. So we're starting to see some strength right here. We're getting back above 50 on the RSI. We're clearing all these levels here. Now, we did get the 50 dropping below the 200, but we got back above the 50 period here. We got back above the 10 on the daily chart. When we get the next sell-off and we're becoming overbought, we'll be watching to see if the low can hold now. We'll be watching for a follow-through move to today's confirmation bar. Like I said, eventually, I think we're moving back up towards this 20,400 area to fill the gap, and then we'll complete a measured move here on the NASDAQ. So that's what I think is happening. I think that will take us on into late September, probably more like on into October to mid-October. We came back, we filled a couple of gaps here, but again, we're seeing the momentum line and the momentum cloud. We're getting above both of those, and we're seeing them turn back up. That purple line there, we've gotten back above the moving averages of 200 and the 50, so we'll be watching to see how all of this unfolds. 2-minute chart, S&P 500. NASDAQ 100. Same thing here with the S&P 60-minute chart. We had the potential bear flag. We rallied towards the 50 period, and then we sold off sharply. S&P was down about 1.5%, recovered. After about an hour and a half of selling, we recovered, and we went all the way back up, got back above our 50, got back above the 200 period moving average. They haven't crossed yet like NASDAQ. Talked about the inside day that we got on Monday. I talked about that scenario, or I talked about a divergence developing and getting one more push down. We came back, we filled this gap right here on the S&P 500, and then began to go parabolic there on the intraday charts. And came back and filled a couple of gaps here. Now we're back above the 200, we're back above the 50. We'll see if we get a pullback, but we are now confirming those bullish inside days. So again, I do expect that the S&P will eventually move to new highs above the peak over here to fill the gap at 56.70 rounding up. I think we will eventually move above that level. There might be more work to be done here. We do need confirmation a follow through to the confirmation we got of the bullish inside days today. But I told you I've been looking for a bottom with the bullish inside day or with a possible divergence here. I told you I didn't know which way it was going to play out. Looking for a bottom this week ahead of the Fed pivot, and I think we'll probably rally for a few weeks. At least historically, that's what we've done. So that's why I think that's probably going to be the case. But an absolutely amazing move today, more so on the NASDAQ, but a drop there for the first hour and a half. And again, a big push higher, a big swing on the S&P as well, even bigger on the NASDAQ. With the rally, we saw the 4-hour charts turn back to bullish. We'll see if they can remain that way. Now, over here, we saw NASDAQ turn back to bullish, but it was a counter trend and it quickly reverted back, and we couldn't get the RSI back into positive territory. Here we did. So, again, we'll be watching to see if we now can keep the 4-hour charts bullish. And again, we saw some real strength there in the 60-minute time frame as well. First, during the session, we saw the NASDAQ start to turn bullish after we had bottomed out. And then the momentum line began to turn back to bullish here, and then the cloud began to change with the rally. And then the last 4-hour bar turned back to green, and again validated that So the NASDAQ turned a little bit ahead of the S&P 500. S&P play catch-up. We are seeing the 4-hour charts now turn back to bullish. So again, formation of the bullish inside days from Friday's low. We'll see if we end up getting a fall here. But a powerful move back up, 700-point swing up and down their trading range for NASDAQ. Absolutely incredible. S&P during the last 4-hour bar, again, turning back to bullish. Again, it sold off, went back, filled that gap, got a bottoming tail there. We saw the momentum line here in the 4-hour time frame turn back to bullish, and then we flipped the cloud there after that. And again, also going back into the positive region here. It was a negative divergence here that gave us this sell-off. Negative divergence over here that gave us this sell-off. I talked about the possibility of some bullish divergences developing. The bear flags ended up playing out. We had the bear flags play out and giving us fake out to the downside. And again, a dramatic drop followed by breathtaking rise. So the signals are back to bullish for now. We'll see what happens. To remain bullish, we start to sell off maybe with the PPI or Friday or whatever. Thursday or Friday, we'll need to see these lows hold over here. Today's low and the low on Friday, if we're carving out a bottom now. So signals turning back to bullish. 4-hour chart of the S&P and on the NASDAQ. But the bulls aren't out of the woods yet. We did get above the 10 period, but we haven't flipped momentum here in the daily time frame with the bullish reversal of conditions for momentum. Did get a green bar in the oscillator, still negative. So again, I'll be watching. Do we get that tomorrow and then get some kind of pullback, or do we pull back and then get it after a pullback? Maybe with the PPI, or a pullback ahead of the Fed meeting next week. We'll be watching. But again, does this flip back to bullish tomorrow for the weekends, or do we pull back first? But you did get a close above the 10 period. The bar is still red here on NASDAQ daily chart. Cloud is still red. We're still below the 50. We're stalling at just under the 20. The 10 is still under the 20. So there might be more work to be done. Again, we'll be watching to see if Friday's low can hold and if today's low can hold here on the NASDAQ daily chart. 4-hour charts and 60-minute charts we're seeing begin to flip there. We'll need to see it flip here in the daily time frame here. NASDAQ daily chart. Same with the S&P 500. Rallied right up into the 20-period moving average. That's the blue line right there. The 10 is crossed below the 20. Not able to flip the momentum yet here in the daily time frame. We'll see if that happens. Again, we are doing it on the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart, shorter time frame, it could flip back to bearish. If we can't flip it back to bullish here, we'll see if we do flip it back to bullish. CD trying to firm up here at the center line. Stochastics turn back up. Now seeing the oscillator go negative right there ever so slightly. So again, we'll be watching to see what becomes of today's bars. Do we have bottoming tails and we're going to just get the confirmation and follow through now? We got the confirmation today. Or is this more of a hanging man candlestick where we have to come back and test these lows, and the risk is that we end up still taking them out? So again, we'll be watching. Again, while the 4-hour charts and 60-minute charts are trying to turn bullish here, you don't have that in the daily time frame, and you're stalling at your 20-period moving average. Got to see this turn back to bullish. If we're out of the woods and have a bottom in, got to see this turn back to bullish. S&P daily chart here. Remember, I told you that the weekly chart, we started off the week with the green bar. I told you that, again, we could bounce off the 20-week or go a little bit lower and then rebound, form those divergences on the hourly charts. While we're bouncing and getting that confirmation of the inside day, the daily chart. But again, I do expect a multiple point divergence to end up developing here over the next few weeks. That had to cough. I'm just getting over a cold. Previous week, still recovering a little bit from it. Hey, I think that we're going to move to a new high. I think NASDAQ will get a lower high. And again, this is why I told you I was looking for a bottom this week. The reasons, but again, I told you I was looking for a bottom ahead of that Fed pivot, because I think we're going to get a Fed pivot rally. And so I think we're carving out a bottom here. We're done yet or not? Trying to get a back above the 10-week moving average on the S&P weekly. Seeing the 10-week on the NASDAQ. Same thing, we had that green bar. I think NASDAQ will eventually fill that gap at 20,400 rounding up. I think it will validate a lower high. Wrong about the peak in July. There's a trend line directly above that. I think more than likely we're going to get NASDAQ and S&P diverging from one another. This is, again, why I'm looking for a bottom and a bigger rally. And as we have the bearish reversal of conditions still in the daily time frame, So too here, we still have the momentum line still bearish in the daily time frame. So we've got to see the daily momentum flip back to bullish. We do have it in the 4-hour time frame, bullish in the 60-minute time frame. It's got to spill over into the daily time frame, and then we got to see the momentum go back into positive territory and start flipping some of these signals in the daily time frame back to bullish. So the bulls have more work to be done if they're going to turn this around right here. Short term, we're becoming overbought there on the 5 and 15-minute chart, so we'll be watching to see if we get some kind of pullback. If so, do the lows from today, from Friday, do those lows hold? But in order for momentum to shift, we got to get that momentum line turning back to blue and turning back up. Got to get a bullish reversal of conditions. The daily chart, the charts I showed you earlier with the cloud and the red bars, we got to see that flip back to bullish. The 10-period moving averages, but we have not flipped momentum officially in the daily time frame, only in the 4-hour time frame, the 60-minute time frame. Same thing here with NASDAQ daily chart. Again, momentum is still negative. That's got to change. We got to get that in the positive region. And then we got to get momentum line right here turning back to bullish. It's still bearish at this point. So again, we've had a rally. We've confirmed a bullish inside day from Monday. We need to see a follow through. We may get a pullback and then get a follow through later for a low from Friday on NASDAQ can hold. Again, trending signals still remain bearish here. The momentum line is still bearish. The bars are still red. Ribbon is still red. So we have more work to be done. If we're to establish Friday's low as a bottom, got to see these momentum signals back to bullish. We got to get a bullish reversal of conditions with the cloud that I showed you earlier. Now we don't have that yet, so we need to see. We have it in the intraday time frame, but we need to see it spill over into the daily time frame. There might be more work to be done before that happens. We'll be watching. Absolutely amazing rally. So often a rally, 700-point swing move on the NASDAQ. The bulls and bears are now fighting it out for control. And let me be clear. Again, I believe we're going to see a bottom going into the Fed pivot. Talked about the two bullish scenarios, the bullish inside day or the diversions. A big dramatic sell-off tomorrow with the PPI, then the other scenario is still in play coming down to the 200. We don't flip these signals back to bullish in the daily time frame. If we flip them back to bullish, and again, we've likely completed the wave B and we're probably already in the wave C, probably eventually take us up to fill the gap at 20,400 on into early October in all likelihood, maybe mid-October. Be watching to see if these daily momentum signals can flip back to bullish. If they do, can the trending signals all begin to start turning bullish? We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. Signs of strength on the 60-minute charts, on the 4-hour charts. We become overbought there on the 5 and 15-minute charts.